you live off-grid, grow your own food, build your own tools, and even generate electricity without wires or solar panels, without permission from any authority, you begin to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. You stop waiting. You stop obeying invisible rules designed to keep you plugged in, paying bills and consuming what others produce. You become what the old philosophers called a free man. And today, in our little corner of the world, your self-sufficient backyard, we're going to talk about the soil under your feet, the bugs buzzing through your plants, and how something as ancient and noble as gardening might just be the boldest declaration of liberty left. We're not just talking about raised beds and tomatoes, my friend. We're talking about designing a living system, an ecosystem, that feeds your body, strengthens your mind, and anchors your freedom. If you can grow your own food, if you can harness energy from the ether itself, not solar, not wind, but free-flowing universal force like John Keeley once dared to demonstrate, then who owns you? No one. You are sovereign. The world doesn't need more consumers. It needs more creators, builders, people who question dogma, not just religious or political dogma, but scientific dogma too. You see, real science, the kind that led Nikola Tesla to dream of free wireless energy, or Victor Schauberger to study the living nature of water, asks why, not just how much. Real science listens to the humming soil, to the patterns in bird flight, to the spiraling motion of the galaxy, and says, there's more going on here than our textbooks admit. That's why when you compost kitchen scraps instead of buying synthetic fertilizers, or you mulch with straw instead of spraying herbicides, you're not just gardening, you're restoring a lost relationship with the earth. And more importantly, you're opting out of a system that wants you dependent on supermarkets, on power grids, on permission slips from the state. Did you know that the monarch butterfly population in North America dropped by over 90% in recent decades? One of the quietest rebellions you can make is to plant milkweed in your backyard. Suddenly, your garden becomes a sanctuary, not just for bugs, but for truth, for life, for a future that doesn't rely on centralized control. I once met a man in the highlands of Peru. No electricity, no running water, but he had a garden that could have fed a village. His hands were rough like bark, and his eyes sharper than any professor's. I asked him why he put so much effort into composting, planting native crops, and using traditional pest control methods. You know what he said? Because the earth remembers. She feeds you better when you respect her. That's the core of sustainable gardening. It's not about trendy greenwashing. It's not about certifications or carbon credits. It's about building resilience. Real, grounded, practical, sacred resilience. It's about making your backyard strong enough to feed your family without asking anyone for help. And here's the beautiful part. When you garden sustainably, you're not just growing food, you're growing life. You're restoring biodiversity, enriching the soil, and creating tiny havens of climate resistance. You're creating micro-universes where the laws of artificial scarcity don't apply. A place where the bees return, where the rain stays in the ground, where your children can taste a tomato and know what real food is. We at Self-Sufficient Backyard salute that spirit, that sacred stubbornness, that refusal to be tamed. Self-Sufficient Backyard warmly welcomes you, fellow seeker of truth and soil. In a world where everything is a service, from your morning coffee to your digital identity, it's easy to forget what real value is. The service economy, while convenient on the surface, comes with invisible shackles. You don't own your food, you subscribe to it. You don't understand your power, you pay for it. You don't grow, build, fix, or even think for yourself anymore, because there's always a service for that. But every service is a contract, and every contract has a clause, obey or be cut off. This is not freedom. This is dependency dressed in luxury. But imagine another way, a system where each person, each family, becomes a sovereign cell in a living organism, self-sufficient, rooted in nature, and powered by knowledge. Not the illusion of equality through shared scarcity, but the genuine unity of abundant individuals, each managing their own energy, their own food, their own choices. That, my friend, is the libertarian ideal in its most sacred form. Not isolation, but interdependence through voluntary cooperation. A true global village, not run by central servers, but connected through shared wisdom. This is where sustainable gardening becomes far more than a weekend hobby. It's a form of rebellion, a path to reclaiming your economic agency. Because he who grows his own food is no longer a client of the machine. He is a creator, not a consumer. And it begins with the techniques. Let's talk water. In a self-sufficient homestead, water is not just a resource, it's life insurance. Rainwater harvesting isn't just about saving on your water bill. It's about shielding yourself from the day when centralized water systems fail, because they will. And when they do, the one with barrels full of clean rainwater is the new king. Composting, that's alchemy, turning banana peels, eggshells, and garden trimmings into gold. Real, black, earthy gold. Unlike synthetic fertilizers that poison your soil and chain you to corporate cycles, composting frees you. You feed your soil feeds your crops, and your crops feed your body. Closed loop, zero waste, maximum sovereignty. And pest control? Forget toxic sprays. Nature already has her own SWAT team. Ladybugs, praying mantises, and companion plants that signal or shield. Learn to use them, and you no longer need Monsanto. You just need wisdom and patience. These natural systems take time, but they work with you, not against life. Then come native plants. These are the unsung heroes of self-reliance. They've evolved for your region. They need less water, fewer nutrients, and no pampering. They resist local pests and invite local pollinators. In other words, they know how to survive without asking permission, just like you should. Mulching? Think of it as a warm blanket for your soil. It keeps moisture in, weeds out, and the temperature just right. And when it breaks down, more nutrients, more life, all from wood chips, straw, or even old leaves that would have otherwise gone to waste. And if all of this sounds scattered, permaculture is your blueprint. It's the philosophy that ties everything together. Water, soil, plants, animals, sun, even your footsteps, all choreographed into a dance of efficiency. A permaculture garden doesn't just feed your belly, it feeds your soul, because every element serves a purpose and nothing is wasted. That's not just design, that's meaning. Now, let's be clear, none of this is easy. It takes work, intention, and most of all, will. But isn't that the point? A life you didn't build isn't really yours. A life outsourced to apps, services, and synthetic systems is a life in a digital cage. And a cage, no matter how luxurious, is still a cage. History has shown us what happens when people surrender their agency to experts. Soviet citizens waiting in breadlines, Venezuelans trading gold for rice, even modern Americans working 60-hour weeks to afford groceries that could have grown in their own backyard. All of it stems from the same root: outsourced sovereignty. But now, a different seed is being planted. People like you are waking up. They're learning that freedom isn't won in courtrooms or protest marches. It's won in gardens, garages, and backyards. It's won by the man who builds his own water pump, or the woman who harvests her own compost, or the couple who powers their home with an etheric generator built from curiosity and stubborn hope. Yes, ether, the forgotten medium, the life force Tesla felt, Keeley harnessed, and the scientific priesthood buried. But if you believe, if you explore, if you build, you'll discover it's still there, waiting, like the soil, like the seed, like your own buried potential. So choose. Be busy in the service economy, endlessly trading hours for tokens. Or be rooted in your garden, your lab, your truth, and trade effort for freedom. Because fate is not given, it is grown. Imagine a world where every family grows their own food, generates their own energy, treats their own water, and educates their own children. Not from a place of isolation, but from a foundation of personal responsibility and interwoven communities. A world where you're not a number in a database, but a steward of land, life, and liberty. This is not a utopian fantasy. This is the only viable future if humanity is to thrive without being enslaved by the artificial complexity of the service economy. Let's be honest. The modern economy is not about producing value. It's about managing dependency. You don't make things anymore. You subscribe to them. You don't own knowledge. You rent it through endless credentials and paywalled journals. You don't grow your food. You order it, wrapped in plastic, shipped across oceans. This hyper-specialized, this hyper-convenient system is fragile by design. It makes you busy, but not free. It turns life into a treadmill, and you're the hamster. But now imagine flipping that script. You step outside, barefoot on your soil, and everything you need begins to return to you. Food, water, energy, clarity. Because when you garden sustainably, you're not just feeding yourself. You're healing the earth and yourself with every shovel of compost, every drop of rain saved, every chemical not sprayed. You're making a political statement, an economic shift, and a spiritual declaration in one quiet, humble act. Let's talk about that soil for a minute. Industrial agriculture treats soil like dirt, a lifeless medium for holding chemical nutrients. But in truth, soil is a living network, a microbiome, an underground universe. Sustainable gardening restores that living structure through composting and mulching. You add organic matter, and suddenly your soil becomes spongy, fertile, teeming with life. Water retention improves, erosion stops, roots dig deeper. And like magic, without paying a single corporation, you get healthier crops, longer growing seasons, and fewer pests. Why? Because nature knows what she's doing. You just need to stop interfering. And here's something most people forget. The health of the soil is directly tied to the health of your mind. Multiple studies, ignored by mainstream narratives, of course, show that contact with healthy soil microbes boosts serotonin. That's right. Touching soil can literally fight depression. So when you choose to enrich the land instead of depleting it, you're healing more than the environment. You're reclaiming your sanity in a world designed to drive you mad. Now zoom out. Healthy soil supports more than plants. It supports biodiversity. Insects, birds, fungi, small mammals, they all return to a garden that respects natural cycles. And these aren't just decorative, they perform vital functions: pollination, pest control, nutrient cycling. This is the web of life, and every garden that joins it becomes a sanctuary, a pocket of resistance against monoculture, urban sprawl, and the gray, sterile death of corporate landscaping. Water conservation is another battlefield. Traditional gardening wastes water through evaporation, runoff, and over-irrigation. But sustainable gardeners use rain barrels, drip systems, mulching, and soil building to lock water into the land. The result? Less reliance on municipal systems, less strain during droughts, and a much lower water bill. Not to mention peace of mind when the pipes go dry. In a self-sufficient economy, every drop counts because every drop is yours. And let's not forget chemicals. Pesticides and synthetic fertilizers don't just kill weeds, they kill the future. They destroy pollinators, poison waterways, and sterilize soil. Every time you avoid them, you're refusing to participate in a system that externalizes cost onto nature. You're saying, no, I won't trade my child's health for a slightly greener lawn. And that's the kind of moral clarity the world needs. You see, the service economy externalizes everything. Your food system pollutes someone else's river. Your electricity grid poisons someone else's air. But the self-sufficient economy is local, grounded, responsible. When you are the gardener, the generator, the builder, you have skin in the game. You make better decisions because you live with the results. And it's here, right here, that libertarianism shows its true beauty. It's not about selfishness. It's about sacred responsibility. It's about the radical idea that free individuals can and must care for their own land, their own needs, their own futures. Not because a government says so, but because truth says so. Because it is right. I once heard a story from the mountains of Bulgaria of a man who, during the communist era, kept a hidden garden deep in the woods. He knew that his assigned rations could never feed his children. So at night, he would sneak away and tend to this forbidden Eden. No pesticides, no artificial fertilizers, just ancestral knowledge, compost, and prayer. That garden saved his family. Not once, but for 3 generations. Today, his grandson teaches others how to garden the same way, quietly, respectfully, freely. That's what we're building here, a chain of resilience. One garden, one backyard, one soul at a time. Not a revolution of violence, but of roots. Not a protest of words, but of worms and water and willpower. Because the fate of the world isn't written in think tanks or tech boards, it's written in soil. And those who understand that will inherit the earth. Here's the truth. They'll never teach you in school or sell you in a service package. You're not alone. The myth of self-sufficiency isn't that you do everything by yourself. It's that you do everything your way, and you choose who to walk with. The most powerful revolutionaries are not the loudest protesters, but the quiet neighbors swapping seeds over the fence, the kids learning composting instead of scrolling TikTok, the small groups gathering in backyards to share food, tools, and wisdom freely, outside the economy of control. That's the beauty of sustainable gardening. It starts in the soil, but it grows into community. Real community. Not the one that demands you subscribe, vote, comply, but the kind that says, I see you, I've got extra mulch, let's trade. A world where nobody's tracking your calories, your carbon, or your cash flow, just your kindness, your care, your courage to build what the system said was impossible. Imagine a neighborhood where everyone has rain barrels, where kids grow up knowing the names of native plants, where no one has to drive to the store for lettuce because every block is a store, where your front yard isn't decorative, it's declarative. A living manifesto. I feed myself, I feed others, I am free. And don't underestimate what one garden can do. Movements don't start in Capitol buildings. They start with calloused hands and sunburned backs. The Great Awakening will not be televised. It will be planted, watered, and harvested. When enough of us unplug from artificial dependency and plug back into living systems, the old world will crumble, not with a bang, but with the soft crunch of boots on mulch. So here's your call to action. Find someone near you. Swap seeds, share compost, teach your neighbor what you've learned, start a community plot, or better yet, turn your backyard into one. You don't need permission. You don't need funding. You just need will. Because every time you help someone grow food, you plant more than a seed. You plant sovereignty. You plant sanity. You plant a world where your children won't have to ask, what did freedom look like? Because they'll be eating it for dinner. Thank you for walking with us on this journey. From all of us at Self-Sufficient Backyard, may your soil stay rich, your water stay pure, and your courage never run dry. Until next time, plant boldly, live freely, and never forget, the revolution begins beneath your feet.